The most important film you'll see this year is SunSpiracy, The Age of Endarkenment. And we have the director, and we have the creator and scientist, Dr. Sarah Pugh and Chrissy Van Wijk. Welcome, ladies. How are you?
Yeah, good. Fairly good. Although before we started recording, I said I was feeling a bit rough. And a lot of people have been saying they're feeling a bit rough in a few days. And funny enough, I haven't been outside for a few days either. So you'll see how important that is later on when we explain what the film is about.
And also, we've got the big premiere tomorrow. So I think both Chrissy and I are both really excited. And, it's such an important bit of information, and it was so well put together, the film. I think we're both really on it, we're so excited for the release tomorrow. So we'll get into
Spot
the
on.
details.
Spot on, yes.
Right. So, Dr. Sarah, tell us, please, what is your inspiration for this epic, important film?
Okay. For a long time, ever since I was about 18, I've been really interested in health and how the body works. And over the years, I've gone through a lot of things and discovered what can be a cause of aging: diabetes, depression, pretty much everything that we can imagine that plagues modern society, and probably lots of the listeners. So what happened was, about 8 years ago, I got particularly serious over the light and how light controls biology, whether it's our mind or whether it's our chemicals in the body like neurotransmitters or our hormones. And then over the years, I've been making content to educate people how science and things like light and water and magnetism drive biology, because we're very much stuck in this biochemistry and pharmaceutical paradigm. And a lot of people, as they know for themselves, they don't feel any better, and they've been taking these things for a long time. And then I had the pleasure of meeting Chrissy, and because David Icke's always on the ball, he had already discovered these sun lies, and how something that's completely free, which people don't even really know what it is, like it's explained in the film, people don't really know, including scientists, what the sun is, let alone all of the huge health benefits that we're going to talk about today, from mental health, all of the things we've talked about in the film, and the science behind it. So I was then invited to go up and record some sections for the film with Chrissy and Jamie. And then when I watched the film, I thought I was captivated, and even though it's my area, I really enjoyed the film. I was like, oh wow! So that's, in a brief nutshell, what I want to do to help people, and a bit about my background. So I'm definitely very scientific, but I'm also extremely open-minded to everything, and I'm very objective of how I look at different things. And there's a whole huge range of topics we could talk about, but I think the most important thing is to talk about the sun to start with, and for Chrissy to explain what the film's about, or the documentary SunSpiracy, and what prompted them to release this really important information to the public.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Yes, Chrissy, please tell us, what is the inspiration, your involvement, and your thoughts on
I
sunscreen?
knew absolutely nothing about it. One of my best friends in New Zealand has a partner now since a few years. And whenever I see her posts on social media, she's always talking about light, circadian rhythm, how important the food is that is grown outside, and how it needs to be in your near environment so that it creates cellular coherence, because you eat what's in your environment. There's always her in the light, in the sun, and in the evenings always wearing the blue block glasses. And I was like, wow, this is really fascinating. And then about a year ago, she sent me a synopsis for a film that she wants to make. And I have to say, it's basically her idea. Her name is Dr. Vanessa Ingraham. It's her idea. And I thought that would be great. I've got about 10 projects lined up of things that I want to do, all to do with whistleblowing and enhancing consciousness around themes. That's what my work is as a filmmaker. But then I booked a ticket to go to New Zealand, to go back to where I used to live for 8 years. Hadn't been for 6 years. And so in January, I went back for the first time, and I thought, great, this is my opportunity to meet her in person and to film with her. So I booked one of my old mates, who's a cinematographer, over there, because I thought I don't have enough gear to that I can take to New Zealand to do. the whole film. And so he and I filmed her during about a week or so, and she talks about all different aspects of the importance of sun, and I was absolutely blown away. I was absolutely blown away that I realized how so many problems humanity has are caused by the wrong exposure to the wrong kind of lights and at the wrong timings, and that it's all about getting your circadian rhythm right, and which then in turn makes sure the hormones functions well and the mitochondria function well, etc., etc. But that's more Dr. Sarah's point of view. And by the way, what I really love about Sarah, about you, is that when I interviewed you, you were so scientific, and at the same time, you didn't shy away from going into a territory which would be considered conspiracy. But you managed to glue that together so beautifully, and this is why I really feel it's important people watch this film, because there's so many aspects that are starting to make sense when you watch.
Shall we watch the trailer?
Yeah.
All right then, let's do that.
The light you see is important for your health as the food you eat, the water you drink, and the air you breathe.
Hi, my name is Dr. Vanessa Ingram. I'm a naturopathic physician and educator. After 15 years in clinical practice, I've come to believe that it's our circadian biology and our light environment that is the most important determinant of our health.
One of the things we're understanding is the incredible health-giving properties of the sun.
I stumbled upon hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of studies showing how our relationship with light was fundamental to how my body could operate.
When we think about our kids who are all of a sudden in a situation where they're using a lot of technology at night, what we're seeing is a lot of kids going through earlier puberty, boys with higher estrogen levels.
By demonizing cholesterol, we're actually trying to say that vitamin D is bad as well, and we're doing things to affect sex hormone levels.
Looking back at the research, we found we've hurt many more people than we've protected from melanoma with this anti-sun messaging.
You are a battery made out of water, charged by sunlight.
Our bodies actually produce light.
I started to realize I need to eat what can be grown with the light in my environment, because literally the plants in my local environment are taking in the light as code, just like I'm taking in the light as code.
Society has done a massive, uncontrolled, unethical experiment by introducing LED lights across every part of our world.
The SunSpiracy is the work of a hidden force behind human society that is seeking to destroy our harmony with those solar energies.
If we don't get enough UV light on the skin, it's not just for vitamin D. We don't have that regulatory function of our immune system, so we could be predisposed to more autoimmunity, more inflammatory conditions.
Number one, go outside in the morning.
Get the full benefit of natural daylight, whatever the weather.
So beautiful. So, Dr. Sarah, we were discussing mitochondria, the melanoma situation, sunscreen. Can you give us more detail on that so people understand?
Yeah, sure. So with the sun, and a lot of people have heard of as above, so below. So we have the sun which creates light, but also inside our bodies, we make our own light as well. And our mitochondria are something people have heard of because you do learn about it in school, but you're taught incorrectly. So they're basically like a little microprocessor inside our cells. They do a lot more than just making energy for the cells. They also make water, they regulate our genes and our immune system, and they're extremely dependent on getting the right light signals from the sun, because they also are where metabolism happens. So glucose and protein and fat goes in, so our food, and then oxygen, and then out comes what I was saying, water, energies, a variety of hormones, but also they do cell signaling in the body. when we get incorrect sunlight exposure, it's like our car not knowing whether we need fuel or not. And a lot of people suffer these days with problems with metabolism, diabetes, energy, mental health, brain fog. So in simple terms, we've got the big sun, which we need for, as Chrissy described, our circadian rhythm, which is the timing in the body. So like anything, everything has to be done on time for efficiency. We all know that our phones, our cars and things, everything has to run in order. So the sun not only controls all the timing in the body, so everything's done on time and is efficient, it also has a huge influence on our mitochondria, because they're the little microprocessors and power plants in the cells. That's the very, very basic. You mentioned different diseases. About 85% of disease is caused by mitochondria that malfunction. So it's a very simple thing that everybody can do would be to get correct light at the right time, improve their circadian rhythm, and then also get exposure to ultraviolet A and B light, which are something that's been demonized. And Chrissy mentioned that whistleblowing is something that she specializes in. So to answer the question, for people and their mitochondria, the very first thing that they can do is get bright light in the morning, even if they can't get up for the sunrise, and then make it dark at night. So that's a very simple, basic yin yang. If you want to look in any ancient histories or universal truths of how do we learn and understand what's true and what's not, I always come back to the yin yang. Everything's balanced and everything's paired. So even for a lot of people I work with, they didn't even know that they needed to get bright light in the day and for things to be dark at night. And for a lot of people who don't sleep very well or have hormone problems, just something simple like that can save them a lot of stress and also medication as well. When you were asking about sun cream, there's lots of reasons this is a problem, because it's like sunglasses. It's a huge industry that's funded by pharmaceuticals, even if it's something that we buy over the counter. Because if we block ultraviolet light, first of all, the ultraviolet A, which comes out in the morning, that makes our neurochemicals, things like dopamine, serotonin, and it also triggers thyroid production. A lot of people have thyroid problems and metabolism issues. It also makes something called nitric oxide, which is really important as a vasodilator. So there's a lot of problems nowadays with cardiovascular disease and brain problems, because there's not enough blood flow, because the organ's only as healthy as the blood flow to the organ. So if we're putting sunscreen on, we've blocked the UVA, so we've affected our biological pharmacy, our mood. Then we've got the ultraviolet B, which makes vitamin D, which is actually a hormone. It does probably about 200 or more things in the body, and your body likes to make it itself using light signals from the sun, so it can distribute this vitamin D around the body at the right time. Just taking a supplement that comes from a factory that's been made artificially and dumping it in the stomach, that's not how the body likes to organize and manage things. And there are a huge amount of studies that people know about the problems of low vitamin D, and they've tried as hard as they can to just say, oh, just take supplements. But emerging studies are now showing it has to be exposure to the natural light source. And there's an epidemic of low vitamin D in places like Britain and also Northern Europe. And you mentioned melanomas. In fact, we have more melanomas in places where there are less sun. And then behavior of British people, say, who they don't get proper sunlight exposure here because they don't know, then they go on holiday, get burnt in Cyprus, or they go on holiday and slather themselves in sun cream and then end up not making any vitamin D. So this is just scratching the surface of the problems, just explaining things in a way that that people have heard of, because most people have heard of thyroid or vitamin D. So that would be sort of a whirlwind tour of mitochondria, hormones, and why covering yourself in sunscreen is a bad idea. The other issue about sun cream is that we've got lots of different wavelengths or colors of light that come out of the sun. So if we block the ultraviolet, it just means the blue and the cyan light is going to penetrate more deeply and get more concentrated. And if we look at the studies, we'll see there's an explosion in what's called a basal cell carcinoma, and which is a cause of using sunscreen. the other things is that people use sunscreen and then think they can stay out longer and then encounter problems of dehydration or sunstroke and then blame the sun, which further propagates this, oh, the sun's dangerous. So there's a huge amount of opposition just on this subject alone about going out in the sun. As it says in the film, it was accounted very well about how doctors from like the 20s and 30s, having sunshine was actually a prescription, and people were always wheeled outside in hospitals. They also made sure that patients always were by a window, and they were just lined up outside, and people get better quicker when they go outside. And even just something simple like in a hospital, if you've got a window, you're much more likely to leave early. And when Dr. Martin Moore-Reed has done studies, people have far less symptoms and problems. This is in a psychiatric hospital when they had a window rather than being in a dark room. And people got better and actually left psychiatric hospitals quicker. And the only thing that they were measuring in this study was whether there was a window there or not. And even getting light through glass, it's not ideal because it's changed. Light blocks UV light and some of the near infrared. So glass is not ideal, but it's better than nothing. The real deal is to just go outside and get the sunlight there. People spend a lot of money on red light panels, which many are just overpowered and full of cheap components from China with about a 20 times markup, when the sun makes near infrared light all day, whether there's clouds or not. So you can get free healing, especially at sunrise and sunset, which everybody can go out in, babies, people with cancer, people with vitiligo, all sorts of things. So they're missing this just natural, very safe window that's being given to us to heal in. And then the daytime is when we have the ultraviolet light. And that's the main one that's been demonized because we always have to have a yin yang. We need ultraviolet to balance the near infrared. So the other big problem about all these skin cancer studies is people have looked at shining UV light on bald mice or in monkeys' eyes, just an artificial UV light inside without balancing it with the natural spectrum or any infrared. So like everything, nature's balanced. And if you take away something and just bombard people with artificial UV light, of course, something unpleasant's going to happen because it's not natural. And this is fueled and paved the way for people to demonize the sun, encourage sun cream use, and encourage sunglasses use. There's a much darker side to this as well, which is described in the film about mind control, which began with there's MK Ultra, there's the mafia all the way back in the 1920s who knew how to control people with light, because they used to make casinos with no lights in them and just artificial light, because they knew they could control people. They'd spend more, drink more. So none of this is anything new at all. And because people aren't taught about light properly in school or university, where in a biology and like a biochemistry and chemicals mindset, they don't realize that we're all wide open to be manipulated by light and told not to go outside and get natural sunlight, because we can undo a lot of it by just going outside and getting natural sunlight. And also, as Chrissy talked about at the beginning, it's really important to talk about consciousness and our intelligence and our evolution as people. And a lot of people like Richie Allen, who I was interviewed by yesterday, said that when he lived in Spain for 8 months, he just woke up by himself. And that's how he dreamt up his platform where it's free speech. So there's a huge amount of consciousness, hormones, mental health, physical health, obesity is through the roof now, and diabetes. We can talk about the light and food and leptin and metabolism if you want, but I think I've covered it in a way that somebody who's never heard of us or me would be, oh, this is interesting. I didn't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree, Sarah. And I mean, amazing how you just explained it. And just wanted to add one little thing is that before the Industrial Revolution, there was a very different pattern of illnesses among people. And they were, of course, working outside most of the day, and artificial light wasn't there yet. So when the Industrial Revolution started and people went indoors and were then exposed to artificial light, all these new illnesses started to come in. And then, of course, you had the Rockefellers who introduced synthetic pharmaceuticals to the people and basically forced them upon education boards and universities to basically say, you can only use synthetic medication from now on. And there were heavy punishments for people who were practicing the old way of medicine. So you can see how quickly the human health would have declined.
Yeah, absolutely. It's shocking. There are lovely, beautiful old photographs online, and we see them more and more as people are awakened to the fact that the sun is also being dimmed, which we'll come to. But there are countless pictures of patients in hospitals being wheeled outside, lined up in the beds, and just left there. Back in the day, mums would put their babies outside the back door and leave them there for the morning nap. We've, and in the 70s, I'm a 70s child. It'd be like, go and get some fresh air. That's all you ever bloody heard. Get outside and get some fresh air. But the air's not so fresh of late, is it? And, obviously, Chrissy, you're known for your brilliant films and, whistleblowers that you gather around the world. And let's look at how much is misconstrued in schools. Like, do we know what children are being taught now with regards to getting out, getting fresh air, and how important light is to them?
I personally don't know much about the education currently, but maybe you do, Sarah?
Yes, I know a lot about the United States and also here. So basically, in the United States, the children drive to school in a car, they get out and go straight inside. And they start looking at technology, because a lot of schools, everything's digitized now. And even when I went to Holland, which was recently, I did the school run there and I was shown the school, and they did play outside. And then we went inside and it was just a giant screen. And then there was lots of technology around. And I looked at the lights and thought, oh dear, because there are some countries like Holland and Sweden that are health conscious, but they just don't know the basic things about lighting. Then, because there's this myth that it's incandescent, or the old-fashioned lights are wasteful for energy because they make infrared light, and some of that's heat. So they've taken out the old lights and put really awful fluorescent and LED lights into new buildings and hospitals and schools. And when we expose children to this kind of light, it's going to affect their eyes, because artificial light's bad for our retinas. And everybody's noticed that a lot of people are wearing glasses much younger. Then it's also going to deplete dopamine, which is really important for learning, having motivation, movement, and also it's very important in addiction pathways. So we're predisposing our children to not learning as well, and then children then develop addictions, whether it's sweets or computers or gaming. So unfortunately, the environment in the school isn't like how I went to school, which was in the 1970s and 80s, where we a lot of the time the windows were broken, and we didn't really, and then we didn't turn the lights on sometimes, and we were all chucked out at break time, and we had a lot more physical activity outside. Some countries like Finland have taken classrooms outside and made the children not wear any shoes and done all the teaching there. And they found lots of the ADHD just went away, as did the anxieties and all the other mental health problems that we're seeing in people who are sort of 8 years old or 11. And then the scores in the schools skyrocketed. So that alone, you can look up the study in Finland because it's quite famous. And then all you have to do is go and look in a school and you'll see how much electronics they're using, and it's just become completely normal. Or some people call it the electronic babysitter, and then people do their homework on the computer, whereas we all did it on paper, and we had blackboards or whiteboards. So the level of artificial light exposure in school is enormous. So that's why I really get concerned about what's going to happen with children, because first of all, their skulls are thinner, their nerves are not myelinated properly. So we've got myelin, melanin, and melatonin, which we'll talk about. So it's already predisposing children to neurological issues. Then the other thing about, I mentioned melatonin, that's something we need to sleep. So if children are up at night doing their homework on an iPad or looking at things or watching television, they're knocking out all of their melatonin production, which means they're not going to sleep properly. And then there's that's going to propagate into the next day, manifest as behavior issues. But this is also the same for adults, that there are numerous studies on what happens when you expose yourself to artificial light at night, and it opens adults up to everything from obesity, cancer, diabetes, mental health problems. And as adults, we've got used to some of this and we grew up without it, whereas the children are having a direct blast of all of this artificial light to start with. And then I don't know exactly what they teach in schools, whether that when teaching about the sun being dangerous, I would imagine there's you have to bring sun cream to school and put it on. But I think a lot of people don't even go outside that much, especially in America. And then for schools here, sure, you can get outdoor schools, but I don't know what their policies are on putting sun cream on children, because I would imagine because of health and safety there is. So I think that's something that anybody who knows the answer, please let us know.
I know in the States where I lived for the last 20 years, the thinking around children and sunscreen is absolutely intense. They will wear full cover up, swimsuits, long sleeves, very thin but long sleeves, hats, and the slathering on of sunscreen is absolutely rampant. And if you're not doing that, you're actually judged by other mothers and fathers. It's really a big, big thing. So
It's
there's
like
the whole,
non-vaccinating.
yeah,
The same thing.
Yeah.
yeah, and so
Just the
there's
battle.
it's the what?
It's just the battle, having a child in a school now, you're constantly, I mean, I would be full of anxiety if I was a mother now with a small child. I wouldn't be able to how to deal with it, because you will not budge once you know what's really going on. You will not budge. So you're constantly having this barrage of pressure on you. And then on top of that, when they do go outside in a healthy way, then of course we also are dealing with the blocking of the sun, which is really, really happening. This is not just a conspiracy theory. We have a segment in the film where ex-MP Andrew Bridgen speaks about how he's spoken to pilots who used to work for a chemtrailing company, which actually flies their Boeings from East Midlands Airport near where our studios are. And this is really happening.
And the products they're spraying on us, I mean, all over the cars. I mean, it's right there.
You can
And
see
people
it.
who've gathered the pieces, the ingredients, and then use magnets, and they really are full of metallic, microscopic pieces: strontium, barium, aluminium, or aluminum, as they say in America. Some say even human DNA. And for me, they're spraying us like we are the pestilence, we are the bugs in the corn that the elites, as they call themselves, the self-appointed, self-anointed, are absolutely doing, trying to genocide and wipe us out. I cannot tell you the rage I have to contain when I'm doing a conversation like this, the violence I feel in me to want to get Bill Gates in the biggest headlock and smash his face in for him. It wouldn't make a difference. He's so hideously ugly, because evil comes out on the outside. You can't hide evil after a certain amount of time. Who is that boy, that monstrous oink, to dare to touch the sun? It's something I cannot get my head around without, and completely immature about, as you can see. I'm trying not to unravel here. Chrissy, help me.
No, because I'm like you, so I can't help you.
Yeah, it's like if the sun is not there, we die. And then you mentioned conspiracy theories. So let's just go for one here. And Dr. Sarah, do bear with me for a moment. This is going to get a bit wild. But, as we're looking at all the different aspects, there are people that believe that the monsters who are dimming the sun, shutting it down, blocking it, are trying to re-terraform the planet, because there are certain people that aren't fully human. They're hybrids of reptilians or reptiles. There are many that believe this, that the whole Rothschild lineage is reptilian, okay? Which, if that's true, would make sense that you would make a colder, dimmer climate, would it not?
The thing is, like I said, and Chrissy and I agree, we're open to absolutely everything, and everybody knows that they're a cold-blooded animal, and I'm open to absolutely every suggestion possible of why that they're fiddling with the atmosphere, and just for people who follow those kind of things, that's one way of looking at it. For people who might think, oh my goodness, I'm going to not listen anymore, just from a pharmaceutical point of view, if you block the sun, you just make loads more customers, and you make loads of customers for all kinds of other things like supplement companies and everything you can imagine that people spend a fortune on trying to get better. So it basically feeds the economy. And then, as you said, there are certain people who control everything, and wealth all shifts. There's plenty of wealth in the world. It just seems to be shifting their way. So whatever angle you want to look at, they're all right. And it's just stupid. If people think the sun's bad for them, try and grow an apple tree in a dark room. And that's what people are doing to themselves.
Yeah, and I went for a walk the other day, and I tend to do a certain walk near me, and I hadn't been for a few days, but it had been raining, sun, rain, sun, rain, sun for about 3 days. And within those days, everything had become extremely lush, like far more than 3 days before, because of that combination of water and sunshine. Now, obviously, that would affect us as well. Then, if we have, how much 90% we consist of water or something, and that water
that's
is charged
about
by
60 to 70% water. Yes.
Yes, well, Carrie even says if you don't look at molecular count, it's about 90%. I think.
I know what you mean. If we count the molecules, 99 molecules in our body are water, and the other one is something else like DNA or magnesium or protein. So yes, we can look at it in two different ways. Yeah.
Yeah, and then that water is charged by infrared light, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that makes us thrive. The mitochondria are recharged, and that makes us thrive. So this makes absolute sense to me. Water and sun, boom, look, nature shows us exactly how it's done.
Yeah, and like the film says, we are a battery that charges with sunlight. That is our battery. It is the battery for everything. It is the life giver of the entire planet. So, and it was designed that way for us to thrive as humans on this planet and our animals. Dr. Sarah, can I come back to you on the circadian rhythm? There are people out there that don't know what that is or how to regulate the circadian rhythm. Can you give us some advice on that, please?
Yeah, so as I said before, it's one of the most basic things. It's the timing in the body, whether we're talking about organ timing or cell timing or DNA gene expression timing. Everything has to be done on time and efficient, because every cell does about 100,000 reactions per second. So we need this on time. So we're like a super microprocessor. So anything that's going to interrupt this timing is going to mean inefficiency, which the body translates to as a chaos or stress or inflammation or anxiety. So just being out of time, like having jet lag or the clocks changing, people have all felt they feel bad. When you have a bad circadian rhythm, we just learn to put up with things, or we just blame the symptoms on something else. So in terms of how do you do it, if you set your body clocks in the morning by seeing the sunrise, which the ancients knew all about, that sets the clocks for the day. And then you want to, as many times as you can, go outside or open a window, because it's the blue light that comes from the sun that regulates our body clocks. And interestingly, blue light from the sun also regulates fat cell size. So that's another interesting thing for people. Then we want to make sure that when the sun's set, that we tell our brains it's now dark and it's time for all the biology to start to go to sleep, and for melatonin to be made, because that's our sleep hormone. Cortisol is our waking up hormone. So we don't want loads of cortisol in the evening, because a lot of people will relate to being wired and tired at night. So we have to then change our lighting in the house, wear the blue blocking glasses, or go back to candles sitting around the fire, and not go into the supermarket at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night, and not to watch a film on a like gigantic plasma screen that now is everywhere, because it's going to interrupt the timing in the evening, and then people are not going to sleep properly. They're not going to make melatonin, which is also anti-cancer. It's an antioxidant, and it regulates all of our other cells. So when people are not sleeping properly and healing at night, they're just going to get sicker and sicker. And going to sleep and making melatonin and healing is not the same as just knocking yourself out, because lots of people say, oh yes, my head hits the pillow and I go straight to sleep. You can be asleep, but it doesn't mean all the biological processes to heal your mitochondria at night, to do autophagy, which is getting rid of all the old and damaged cells happening. And a lot of people just take stuff now before going to bed, so they trick themselves into thinking, oh, I slept well, when they just basically knocked themselves out because they disturbed the circadian rhythm in the evening. So it's back to seeing the sunrise, getting outside as much as possible during the day, wearing as little clothes as is appropriate for people and socially, and then managing the light in the evening, and not making a daytime in the evening, because it just massively confuses the body. And then when it's light, that's the time when the body thinks it's supposed to be having food. And a lot of people have problems with binge eating and stuff in the evening, because it's all bright in the house, so the brain just thinks, oh, it's still daytime, we'll eat. And then, like I said earlier, doing that in the evening disrupts your dopamine, which is very heavily involved in addiction. So that a lot of the time when people are going to do things like drinking, smoking weed, looking at porn, and eating, ordering from Uber Eats, happens in the evening. So there's a lot of things that can be solved by just beginning to integrate these practices into your life. And ideally, it's better to do it all at once, but bit by bit also works a lot. And it saves people a lot of money and a lot of problems. Especially, I'm very concerned about the children, because they're just at the mercy of the adults. And if the adult's still asleep, how is anybody going to help the child?
100%.
Yeah, really, really sad. Chrissy, what are your thoughts on what Dr. Sarah has just shared?
I have not much to add on that in particular. Yeah.
Well, I was just making a note here. Blue light regulates fat cells. I need to pass that on to a
yeah. It's a good one. And I bought some blue block glasses as well.
Yes.
So that when the sun goes down, So I bought a similar pair to that. And I'm wearing that in the evening. And I'm trying my best, because of course I'm mainly an editor, film editor, so I do a lot of work behind screens. So it's not great. But for some reason, I had the Dutch test done. I don't know if you heard of the Dutch test. It's like...
Oh yes, it's for sex hormones. Yes, carry on. It's very interesting. This is my favorite area, because you read my mind. I was going to start talking about leptin, which is the light-driven hormone that drives all our metabolism and sex hormones. So yes, go on for the Dutch test.
Yes, well, it was interesting because Dr. Vanessa read the results as well, and she said, oh, it's really strange, but your levels are actually quite good. And I am not exposed to the sun that much with my work, but my hormone levels were quite good around all of this. And so I wonder if that the body adapts as well in where you grow up and where you live, that the body just finds another way of compensating a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, when we look at blood tests, we have to think it's a tool and not a rule. And also, me being a biochemist, I like to see a Dutch test, some blood tests, some leptin, and a HTMA, which is to do with minerals. So what it is, it's looked at some of your hormones, which is great, but also it depends on age as well, because when it comes to perimenopause, if you don't do the circadian, the hormones are going to just be awful and all over the place. But when people are younger, we just have more hormones, so we've got more more wiggle room. So a lot of people have horrible perimenopauses, because in my mother's time and when I was young, the perimenopause didn't exist. It's something new, and it's real. So that's great that you have got those hormones are okay. But then because you haven't tested other ones, just me being a scientist, I would say that's great. But also let's look at some more. But also you don't know, because you've been making this film, how much you might think that you don't do what Vanessa and I do, but you've probably changed a lot in your light behavior. And like I said right at the beginning, just doing anything is going to help. And then as you get more into it, you gradually implement more and more when you can.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah. And
brilliant.
that's what we're hoping to achieve with the film, Danny. You know, we're hoping that many people will watch it, because if we want to take our power back, you know, we say a lot of the time, oh, it's all about consciousness. But it's very hard to tap into consciousness when your body is weak and your brain is not functioning properly. So I do think we need all these different levels in balance. We need the body in balance, the mind, the emotions in balance, but also the spiritual, the consciousness in balance. If all of that is in balance, we can actually, you know, make a difference. And this film will definitely contribute to that. I really do feel that.
Yes,
Yeah,
we
and
really
also
want, sorry, everyone watching to share, just share it out. Facebook, Instagram, just spread it out, because there's a whole slew of people walking around in a zombified state, and having this reawakening and information is everything. I mean, literally on a dramatic level, could be the difference between living or not living, you know, in some regards. Sorry, Dr. Sarah, do carry on.
Oh no, what you just said was really profound, because it's the diseases you get from lack of sun exposure are actually the really serious ones that harm people, because the sun is a huge regulator of cardiac health, and obviously a heart attack and heart disease is more prevalent now, especially after the jab, than all the people that are waking up from long COVID or the hoax or the jab. One of the key things that you can do to help it out would be to embrace the sun. And again, some of the components in the jab have done something to mitochondria, and luckily mitochondria will rebuild themselves. But like I said right at the beginning, they're completely dependent on sunlight. The other thing that Chrissy mentioned about consciousness is we haven't talked about melanin yet. We've talked about myelin around the nerves and why children being exposed to too much blue light and computers and not enough sun affects that. We've talked about melatonin a lot. And now for melanin, this is the pigment in the skin, which our body makes in response to ultraviolet light via a protein called POMC. And people can learn about this in the film, because it was explained in an extremely good way for a new person who hasn't heard of POMC or melanin. So with melanin, the reason it's so important is, first of all, it's a semiconductor, so it's part of our bioelectronic system. So we have the water battery, which we've touched upon, but then we've also got our semiconductor systems. And with melanin, it makes, we just pretend we're a computer. It just basically supercharges our motherboard in terms of how we function if our melanin networks are working. Also in the brain, a lot of people have heard of Parkinson's, and there's the substantia nigra, and that means it's just black substance, and it's made of melanin. And then there's neuromelanin, which lines all our nerves, and this is really important for all sorts of neurological situations. Then, as Chrissy mentioned, about consciousness, the melanin lines all of our senses, and senses and perception and being able to perceive, and it is an extremely important part of how we filter incorrect and correct information in. And then with melanin, the more we have, the better our brains are going to function, because the brain is a quantum computer. So it basically is a way to get more intelligence really quickly. This is why I mentioned Richie, who just woke up himself when he was exposed to sun. So as much as we try and educate people about telling them these things, they sometimes don't have the mental capacity yet to understand what we're trying to say. Whereas if you can just say it in a really simple way and get people to go outside more, they sometimes get a download all by themselves, and that's opens the door. And then bit by bit they can be educated, and they'll take on board all of our information that we've been putting out for years, and being able to absorb it and understand it. So that's why I think this there is a lot of spirituality nonsense around, but some of the most basic thing would be just to, you know, if you do spiritual practices and things, just go outside and do them now, and you'll get much better results. And then luckily it's summertime at the moment. So when the rain goes in Britain, because we're having a heat wave at the weekend, people will see the film and start to go, maybe people will start to go out a bit more. And then even just a little bit more melanin is going to, first of all, protect you on the outside from EMFs and electro pollution, because it's a black hole pigment, so it absorbs nasty wavelengths of light we don't want. But then it's going to start to it gets sucked inside and gets integrated into our brains and our nervous systems and our senses, so it then begins to prime people so they're stronger. Like Chrissy was saying, a lot of the time people are just so sick that they just haven't got the capacity to take on board anything because they're just trying to survive. So this, when you get people a bit healthier, all of a sudden they've got more energy to start to be able to learn and do things. So there's a lot more to this than just the light. We've touched on the melanin. We've also brought the water back up again, because water's critical in consciousness because it's a fractal dipole antenna, and then it not only absorbs light, it also, when we get exposed to the near infrared light, it splits, we call it exclusion zone or fourth phase water, and into positive and negative, and we all got taught that in school. So when you start to think about it, you think, oh, I can see there's a battery inside. The film also opens with talking about the electric universe, which is really important because people think the sun's a nuclear reactor. And when you tell people about the electric universe and the Birkeland currents and all of the electrical currents in space, which actually Hans Alfven won a Nobel Prize for collating. The man who discovered Birkeland currents was called a complete lunatic, but Christian Birkeland was actually a complete genius. So he died being ridiculed, but luckily his PhD student carried on with teaching people about the Birkeland currents and the electric universe. And then, as I mentioned before, about as above and so below, we're just bioelectric beings. So this is how we connect all of this into the cosmos, which I'm totally okay with. But a lot of people just parrot words, but they don't actually know how to do any of it or what it even means. So this is why explaining it in over and over again in different ways. And then people can look up Professor Robert Temple, because he's quite famous, and he wrote a really good book called The New Science of Heaven, and he talks about the electric universe, but he's very good at explaining to lay people. So anybody who's never heard of the electric universe, that's the first go-to book, and it's made for lay people. There's lots of interviews with him on the internet as well. He's very articulate and he's good at explaining that. So just the concept of the electric universe for some people who like to have their worlds blown apart and are interested in outer space, and I don't know, there's so many different kinds of aliens we could talk about, but just starting and being sensible, I think, and understanding ourselves, and then maybe thinking about other civilizations later, because just learning about conspiracy theories and talking about them doesn't solve anything. You've got to actually do something about it as well. And luckily, we can do something about the sun problem. And the way that the film is made is it's laid out in a very ordered scientific way that somebody who's doesn't know anything would come away with it feeling very empowered and thinking, oh, actually, I understand now. I think I might be able to follow more of the science.
So good. You know, there's a practice that I really do encourage people to do. And it's so silly because, you know, people that say, oh, it's a new age practice or it's a spiritual practice. No, it's a survival practice. And because we've been told don't look at the sun, so that then we're told, well, okay, do this then. Go out at sunrise and gaze at the sun gazing. Go out at sunset and watch the sun set and stare at it. And for some people, close your eyes and imagine the light is going into the third eye, into the brain, you know, or it doesn't really matter. But we're limited by fearful stories that say if you look at the sun, it's going to burn your retina, your corona. What do you say to that, Dr. Sarah?
Well, no, I can't look at the sun when it's high up in the sky. It's too bright. Whereas it's called eating the sun. And people who do things like breatharianism, this reinforces the idea about how food is only 30% of our energy, and we can get energy from the environment. environment, whether it's magnetism, plasma. We live in the ether, and that's a whole other topic about what we've been lied about fuel, as in petrol and oil, which is the Rockefellers again. We actually live in a sea of charge. We've just been not allowed to make technology to have our own free power pack. So anyway, the ancients knew all about eating the sun, and also, like I said, it's very healing for the body. So a lot of eye problems can be corrected by just going out in the sun. And if people are frightened, they can just look sort of 20 degrees below, so you don't actually have to stare at it. You can just be there and just look at it. And when it comes up over the horizon, because some people aren't in an area where they can watch the sun coming up, and then also this is back to how the sun regulates our cardiac function. And actually the heart is the heart center is the center of the torus, really. And when we project out and do any kind of energy work or manifestation or anything like that, we're actually should be projecting from the heart, because the third eye is something that comes from a completely different culture. Whereas if we want to talk about going back to biochemistry and what doctors understand, they all know that the heart produces a huge electromagnetic field because they can measure it. So again, integrating our heart with the sun outside, and then doing our spiritual practices, whatever they might be, are going to work much better, because there are also other interesting things that happen with the plasma and the way in which the light and the atmosphere and the sun function. So if people want to do manifesting and everything I've talked about, which is real, including the law of attraction, if you understand how a torus works, do it at sunrise and sunset and it'll work better, just in simple terms.
That's so
Wow.
great. You just taught me something, and I'm so grateful to you. Now, I talk about the heart, and I say that when we walk into a room, the heart is doing the reading. The heart is reading the room. But I can't wait for the sun to come out, because it's piddling with rain here in England, and
yeah.
trees are going like this. But I'm so excited just to think that when the sun comes out next, I'm going to go outside and I'm going to expand my heart to it. I just love even the thought of doing that, Dr. Sarah. And I've never heard that before. Thank you so much.
Yeah, because everything in the universe is just made out of the torus, these little and vortices, and the heart's just everything comes back to as above and so below. And also when we do energy work, because I'm training in something which is Chinese, a very ancient form. We all do it with our hands, so we're using the heart meridian. We're not doing anything by beaming out of our third eye. And anybody who's an energy worker, it's always our hands, the healing hands. And that's why having the torus and our flowing in the right direction, and the bigger the biofield, the better. Because when we go into a fear mindset, our biofield shrinks. So we're just more vulnerable, whether you want to talk about parasitic entities or just getting really panic stricken. You can look at it scientifically or more in an etheric world way. It doesn't make any difference. The bigger your torus, you can just see how I've got like a big force field around me. So we can look at this at so many different angles, and this opens up this kind of subject to people who are very spiritual or very scientific. Because other cultures, because we're very separated from China, I can look at all of their internet now because I've been given access, and they can't look at ours. So they have a whole completely different way of looking at medicine and the body. And when we haven't got there isn't a third eye meridian. And then any kind of healing, like I said, and what we learn projects out of the hands. So it's all really about focusing on the heart center. And people can look there's plenty of documented studies of this biofield that the heart produces, and people have known about this for 50 years, and they like to measure it. It's just one of these things that it's so normal to doctors, they can't even join the dots. So yes, it's very important, our own personal biofield, because there's lots of ways that we can take this. Talking about protecting ourselves from non-native EMF, that what I do in the Chinese medicine is human PEMF. So it's emission of EMF by biology. So the more coherent you are, as Chrissy described, the more connected you are with nature, the bigger your water battery. The sun also is a solar panel, so then we've got more energy again. So it's just chi. And then when you get everything flowing in the right direction and make a bigger biofield, first of all, you don't get bothered by other people's nasty energy, but you actually get more tolerant to having to sit in somebody else's Wi-Fi. So there's a lot we can do that we can fight back with. And because for some people, what I've just said, they might just say that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. And I'll just say, well, you can look at Professor Lung's 30 years of work and all of the ancients' work. Do you think that the best thing that the government and the elites, they don't want us to know we've got this power? So all of the stuff that I'm talking about, we've been conditioned to laugh at this and say it's utter nonsense when actually it isn't. And people 100 years ago were busy studying all of this plasma field and all of these interesting things in the body. And that all got squashed in the 1950s when the military got hold of plasma research. And then it was shut off from us forever. But luckily, some people have dug it out. And people who were open-minded in lots of traditional cultures, they've passed on how to do it, but they don't understand the science. So that's where I come in to explain to these energy healers and these people who can do amazing feats, which I've seen lots of here and in other countries. I know it's real, and luckily I've got the scientific language now to explain it to you. So the other thing we've got to really fight back against is the more weird and ridiculous something is these days, the more I'm going to jump on it, because I've thought, oh, good, I've discovered another something that's suppressed science. But we've been conditioned to think in a certain way, to laugh at all of these practices when they're actually, me being a scientist, when I had a very valid PhD, I did a postdoc to come out and say, honestly, that I would sooner jump into the stuff I've just described than ever go back to using my PhD or biology, because it doesn't do anything. It's as Chrissy said, it's the Rockefeller Institute and the Rockefeller University that's pushed us into this everything's a molecule and this way of thinking for so many decades now, that anything that's called, oh, it's new age. No, it isn't. It's actually ancient practices that somebody has tried really hard to suppress. So they do it in all different ways, and they've used making it sound so ridiculous. Oh, look at you, Harry Potters and all of this, and look at all those silly witches and those idiots. And they've obviously burned a load of witches and things who were just people who had all of this knowledge in the past. So luckily it's still here, and there are a few people who have protected it, and then they pass it on. And people like myself and Chrissy, and we don't mind being laughed at, because I'm very much, I don't like to tell people things. I like to show them, give them experience, and then they're like, oh wow, I didn't know I could do that, or I emitted energy. And we can all do it. That's the whole ridiculous thing. And sometimes it needs a bit of help, and reintegrating yourself with nature, a lot of it just happens by accident, and then people can suddenly do things because that they thought was just fantasy. So all of this actually goes into a much bigger topic, because my role is, I just want people to do the quantum, as in what we call the light, or basically do the SunSpiracy film. It'll enhance their consciousness and intelligence, and then they'll be able to take on board and do what we're talking about with science and consciousness, because just talking about consciousness doesn't do that much. And the key thing about, once you've opened your mind, it stays open, and nobody can take that away from you anymore. Like Chrissy's saying, she can't unknow all of the stuff she knows now about children. It's not like trying to learn something out of the book. Once you get exposed and discover the truth and discover what you can actually do yourself, you can never ever unsee or unlearn it.
Oh, amazing. You heard it here, guys, from scientist Dr. Sarah Pugh. Watching the movie SunSpiracy will guarantee that you will become more intelligent and more interesting to your friends and your lovers.
Yeah,
Now,
sold.
Oh yeah, actually we didn't even get into anything to do with sex and nitric oxide, so important for blood flow and erectile dysfunction, and then the sun regulates our sex hormones. So what you said as a joke, many a true thing said in jest. So yes, And also, if you put your bits out in the sun, that's even better. So, but the thing is, we've got an epidemic of people here that are just not interested in sex anymore, and impotent men who are very upset about it, and women who just don't want to have sex. And it's not necessarily them. And sometimes, but lots of people will report themselves. They go away on a nice holiday and it's somewhere sunny with a beach, and suddenly they get very horny. So all the things I'm saying is people think, oh yeah, that happened to me. And a lot of it's also really obvious as well. That's why sometimes the more I learn, the more I think this is all really simple. And it's the same with all of the other whistleblowing and stuff that Chrissy's spent so many years doing. Once you know, it's like, oh my God, this is so obvious.
So obvious. Chrissy, you're going to say something.
No, it's just that when I have to just laugh, at comments that you see when, the trailer came out today and somebody comments, why did this bullshit end up on my feed or something like that, right? Well, we're used to it, but it's like they hardly ever say, this is what I thought was bullshit, like specify what's bullshit. They just come in general terms of this is ridiculous, or you guys are just conspiracy theorists, blah, blah, blah. And they never really get into detail about it.
Well, that just shows their ignorance, isn't it? Just a blanket statement. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, all the people that do that on the internet are the ones who don't have a job and are broke and are really unhealthy. So I just take no notice, because what I do it now for something like 1% of interested people who, and Chrissy's probably the same. If I just change 1 or 10 lives in 1 year, even if it's that, I did something useful for humanity. And this idea of just trolling and writing nasty comments, that's a really great way to deplete your chi, deplete your aura, and you're just going to get more damaged by your own phone that you're busy trolling on, and then wonder why you're on 5 medications and have loads of pain and mental health problems. So I'm completely, whatever, just you're the expert. And I'm in it now for the small percentage that we can help.
Yeah, well said. And we have a website, SunSpiracy.film. And so when people have watched the film, the bios of everyone who's in the film, including Dr. Sarah, are there, and social media links and everything, because I can only speak for myself, but after editing that film, I'm really happy that I have access to these people, because there's a lot more that if I ever need a treatment or whatever, I know who to go to. I mean, you've heard Sarah today, just a wealth of knowledge. It's fabulous.
Incredible. So Chrissy Van Wyck, great filmmaker of the world. Where can we also get this movie? You said that SunSpiracy.film is the website dedicated to the people involved, but where else can we get it? Will it be going on Iconic?
Yeah, so SunSpiracy.film is a website linked to Iconic. So it's an Iconic production. I work for Iconic Media, which was started by the son of David Icke, Jamie Icke. And we're all, it's a bit of a family business kind of thing. We're all working together. So they have a platform, a little bit like an alternative Netflix kind of idea. We pride ourselves on bringing uncensored knowledge to the people. We're very stable in our message. We don't fluctuate. Oh, Trump. Oh, no, Trump. We're very stable in our message. And we're getting more and more people coming to us now because of that, and being completely uncensored and not bought and, paid for. So it's on Iconic, ICKONIC.com from the 21st of June, summer solstice we chose as a date, thought that was quite apt.
I love that.
Tomorrow, of course, we have a theatrical premiere in Birmingham at the Mockingbird Theatre, openvisionevents.com if you wanted to come and watch that. So people can go to sunspiracy.film and put their email address in, and they will be given a free link to watch the film. They can watch it for 48 hours for free from the 21st of June, and then hopefully become a member afterwards.
Wonderful. And as you said, at Iconic, David Icke's sons, and all of you work together. And Iconic is set up with a passion and a love for humanity to be an example of what Netflix should actually be. Because Netflix to me is the most depressing pile of poop. Honestly, I'd rather shovel elephant poop all day, I would, than it's so depressing. You know, click, 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 mind numbing, clicking.
Yeah, but it's violence everywhere. When we went to watch Disclosure Day yesterday, there was half an hour of trailers beforehand, and they all had violence in them, and they're all focused on more duality, and kill anyone who doesn't agree with you kind of idea. So whether that's a country against another country or us against the aliens or whatever, there's a constant divide and rule energy here, and that's the kind of thing we completely try not to do at Iconic. It's much more inclusive without being virtue signally inclusive.
Yes. I was there too yesterday. I went to see the Disclosure movie too. Thought it was the biggest pile of elephant poop I've ever seen. And I definitely saw how they're trying to have people sympathize with grey extraterrestrials. That's
exactly
no.
what I said.
That is a absolute no. The only good thing that happened was this cute man was rustling his toffee papers, and I just kept looking at him. And every now and again, it woke me up because I was seriously trying not to fall asleep. I promise you. Went with an open mind. I was hoping I was going to be wrong. Rubbish, absolute rubbish. There's a bit of an outcry on the channel.
It was real Hollywood
garbage.
Cheesy.
Yeah, cheesy garbage.
And like exactly what you just said is exactly the first thing I said when we walked out. I said they want us to empathize with the gray aliens. They made it look like they are the wise ones who will come to Earth, and then we will accept them. And then this whole AI agenda can be accepted by the people because we've been groomed through Hollywood movies to accept the agenda.
Exactly. Absolute nonsense. Right. Well, I've had a blast with you gorgeous ladies and your brilliantness. Thank you so much. So, Dr. Sarah Pugh, thank you for your dedication and your hard work and getting a lot of use out of your PhD. It's a joy to see you. And dear darling Chrissy Van Wijk, thank you for everything you do on this planet and all the great dedication you give yourself also to humanity. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Danny, as well, for giving us this platform, of course, because it's very helpful.
Yeah, thank you for this. So like I said about Richie, we need to support all of the free speech platforms that we've got because they're so valuable, including Iconic. Because when you said about the dreadful film, it's like watching the news. I'd rather shit in my hands and clap because it's a really good way to get horrific. What they're trying to do is they're trying to make you terrified to shrink your biofield. That's all, so that's the other thing. Netflix and the news, just stop.
Oh my God, that's so funny. That is so funny. I'm sorry, I've heard before, or shit in me out and punch it. I've heard that.
I love that one.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's a great, joyous note to end on.
Oh, so yeah, no, I always like to end on something funny because we have to always keep our sense of humor and our biofield and our sun. So, we have to laugh. That heals a lot. So, yes, thank you.
Yeah, it definitely does. Definitely does. Thank you, ladies. And to the beautiful audience watching, please share, share, get this out, show it to your families, your kids, take the information that you glean and pass it on verbally, any way that we can rise up our brothers and our sisters, because this is our planet and we are taking it back. My name is Danny Henderson, and if you don't agree with me, I'm going to kick your ass. Just joking. Sending you lots of love. See you all soon. Thank you, ladies.